This is Beyond a Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Gary Smith.
Well, welcome, Gary, to the Sunday Altar of Bard. By the way, today I put on a freshly laundered white V-neck shirt for you.
Well, thank you very much.
There's been some comments about your apparel as of late, and I figured to kind of channel you, I would join in the white T-shirt look. What do you think? I
appreciate it. I like it. It looks good. I will say that I threw on a lint roller for you as I see some of the comments, but you know, the T-shirt tends to be my uniform. I try to follow a standard of look, you know, when I can.
Right, exactly. Well, I think, who was it, Zuckerberg, who said that then it's one less decision he has to make each day.
I think Zuckerberg stole it from Jobs, but yeah, it's certainly a staple in the tech world.
Okay, I love it. I love it. That'll be your tech go-to axiomatic rule to live by. Interesting story. The Supreme Court came with a unanimous decision on the wetlands, split interestingly into a majority and a concurring.
Yeah,
did you?
5-4 split, but unanimous decision. It was weird.
Yeah, and by the way, the concurring opinion, I believe, was written by Kavanaugh and joined by the three what are always called the liberal justices.
Correct.
Also agreeing, but for different reasoning than the majority did, that by the way, this court is dismantling the kind of reach of the EPA case by case, if you haven't noticed.
Yeah.
And this one is that the expansive reading, and this is their language, of wetlands was going to be, they're basically reading it out of the statute, and they're hewing at least the 5 row on the majority concurring opinion that expansive reading is not in the text, it's not in the case law, and Kavanaugh had different reasons, but all 9 found that the EPA had overstepped its bounds by saying that the wetlands being 300 feet near this couple's property meant that they could not develop the property. And
they expanded it to their discussion was a continuous surface in connection with waters of the United States. And I was surprised in reading about this ruling because it has gotten a little bit of coverage that I believe it's over 5% of the land in the United States is considered to be wetlands. I mean, that, I guess when you think about places like Florida, that is somewhat easier to believe, but it wasn't something that was top of mind for me as a Californian.
It has been top of mind for me because I talked before about the creek that kind of runs through La Cañada, and there's a whole network of intermittent streams is what I think they call them. And so, and back in my youth, there was a place called Devil's Gate Dam where back when the water table was much higher, it actually held water. You're now starting to see that as California is leaving its drought status, starting to see that happening. And I thought that was interesting. Then it caught my eye on another story. Did you see this pasta story?
Yes, I did. This is out of Old Bridge. It was actually a couple of weeks ago that it started to make news. I'll throw up a picture. It's
like somebody. Yeah. Why don't you tell the background on this?
Yeah, basically a Facebook post alerted a local official, I believe a failed local politician, started to try to make noise about this, that over 50 pounds, I believe, it might have even been 75.
500 pounds.
Oh, 500. My mistake. Okay, yes. I knew it was a large number. I didn't have it in front of me. But all this pasta was strewn along the edge of a river. And, somebody posted about it on Facebook and said, what's going on here? And a local politician started to make noise. And they've since identified, apparently, who the culprit was.
And apparently this guy, his mom died, and she was a hoarder. And she had hoarded 500 pounds of pasta, And so I guess he dumped it by the river, and then it got wet, and then the pasta does what pasta does.
Yeah, right. It looked, because of the water and the moisture, it started to appear that it was cooked, but then it became apparent that it wasn't. And it stretched 25 feet down the edges of the river, and it was quite a bit. I mean, it was pretty funny.
Okay. Now there's from the sublime to the ridiculous. You may remember the Gabby Petito story. You remember that story?
Yeah, absolutely. The couple in the camper van that were traveling cross country and posting on their YouTube channel, and they were stopped by police, and I believe it was Moab, and they were eventually questioned and eventually let go, and then tragically, the female in the couple was found dead. And then shortly thereafter, the boyfriend or fiance rather was also found dead back in Florida after having returned home alone. Right.
Right. And then the parents of the young lady who was tragically murdered, sued the parents of the young man who is presumed to be the killer. And there's been a civil battle. It's an interesting legal issue over a letter that the young man's mother wrote to him.
Right. This is sort of the cover of the letter that was found amongst his remains after he tragically passed. After he passed and he was found, they have this letter, and then also we have an image here of the contents of it itself. And some of the messaging from her to him is, depending on what lens you're viewing it through, a little disturbing, or fiercely loyal from a mother to a son. And she's saying,
it says, if you need to dispose of a body, I will show up with a shovel and garbage bags if you fly to the moon.
Right.
So the parents of the deceased woman want this letter admitted. The lawyers for the parents want the letter admitted to show the conspiracy. The lawyers for the mother of the deceased man are arguing against its admission, saying it was written long before the woman's disappearance and subsequent death, and that it's an unfortunate choice of words, but should not come in because it's too prejudicial.
It's undated, by the way.
Undated, right. And so I'm going to speculate. I don't know if he's ruled, the judge has ruled, but I'm going to guess that he's going to say it goes to weight and not admissibility, and allow it in and allow the jury to determine whether or not it was indicia of a conspiracy, number one, or if it showed pre-existing intent such that she would do something after the fact to obstruct the investigation, basically, and allow it in. I think a judge would probably rule that it's probative.
Do you think that the burn after reading annotation and the lack of date is going to fiercely work against them, or how would you be handling that?
I think there's an argument that you would make. I mean, I can see the argument that would be made on both sides. And the lawyers for the mother are going to say, look, she's a mother. This had nothing to do with the disappearance. This was written because they were having a troubled mother-son relationship at that point, or they'd say a bump in the road. And most mothers would be fiercely protective of their sons, notwithstanding if there is a missing woman. The lawyers for the parents of the woman, Gabby, are going to argue that doesn't matter. It's not dated, number one, so that's a factual determination that the jury's going to have to make. And by the way, even if the jury says that it was before the disappearance of the woman, or even any hint of trouble there, that it goes to show it's probative of whether to what lengths the mother would go. And obviously, if you're going to bury a body, I'll bring a shovel. I just can't imagine that a judge would exclude that and wouldn't say that that is probative of a future action that she might take. Unfortunate. I mean, really unfortunate. Burn after reading, I think, is probably the argument is going to be that's based on the book.
Right. Yeah, sure. That's an easy argument to make. Yeah, you know, I can certainly see both sides of it as well, because I don't think there's really much that my wife wouldn't do to protect my son. And if they were having a rocky relationship, I'm sure she would say anything under the moon to try to reassure him that everything in her power that she could do to protect him and keep him safe would be something she would do. So I can easily see that kind of a hyperbole being used in order to reestablish trust.
Yeah, and it's I think that when you hear that expression, it goes to weight, not admissibility. Most judges would probably say, unless it's unduly prejudicial, and this is obviously on its face prejudicial, and so they generally would do a weighing of prejudice versus probity, and that's the legal analysis or evidentiary analysis. But I think because it's undated, I think that tilts towards letting it in and making your arguments in front of the fact finder, which would be the jury.
Yeah. There was also a story coming out of the legal world about the use of Chat GPT, which is a hot topic right now, especially with the writer's strike going on in our neck of the woods in Los Angeles. And I want you to describe this story. This kills me. Yeah. So this is a fun story where basically a lawyer used the AI tool Chat GPT, which for those who aren't aware, maybe living on Mars, is a chat bot where basically you can tell it you can give it a prompt and it will spit back out, in many estimations, astonishing things. So you can tell it, write a joke in the style of Adam Carolla about someone from the South and, who's got an accent, and it will do a somewhat startling job. And in this case, a lawyer.
By the way, isn't there also a bard?
Yeah, there is
a BARD. Yeah. Which we should probably ask Bard whether that infringes on beyond a reasonable doubt. But
yeah, exactly. So in this situation, a lawyer used the same tool to do case research, and Chat GPT cited legal cases that don't exist, and this lawyer used it, and he got caught. And
when he got caught, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't he show a screenshot to say that kind of double down or say, I still think these are real cases?
I think he did, yeah, and that didn't end up lasting very long because he was found out. I can personally say that I've used this tool before, and just playing around with it, testing it out, and I told it to write a biography of me, and it did an astonishingly good job. But also, of the 6 or 7 paragraphs that it spit back at me, there were at least 3 that were just factually completely inaccurate. And
what do you think that is? Where is it drawing on that it's making these mistakes?
Well, from experts that I've listened to talk about it, it's basically drawing from all written text on the internet. So it's sucking in, any information that it can find, right? And then in my case, I asked it to write a biography of me within the context of the Adam Carolla show. So, if you tell me about Gary Smith, it says no. But if you add in, employee of the Adam Carolla show, or, producer of the Adam Carolla show, then it starts to pull from that side as well. So what it did was it gave a pretty decent biography of me, but it also pulled in that I had worked for the radio show and things much earlier in Adam's career before I had come in contact with him. So I think that it's sort of confusing just worked for Adam Carolla with, Gary Smith specifically worked for Adam Carolla. So it was pulling in pieces that didn't apply to me. And we've done this as well with other employees like Mike Dawson, and it does the same thing where it will just pull in 75-80% of it's correct, and then it pulls in little nuggets that apply to other people who have worked for Adam Carolla that don't apply to the specific person you're asking about. So I'm not surprised.
Did you do any looking to see how it came up with cases that don't exist?
No, I couldn't I couldn't quite figure that out, but what I would imagine is that it's what it's talking about, what it's pulling in is it's pulling in people writing about theoretical cases or writing about, situations that would be similar to a real case, and it can't tell the difference. I mean, people talk a lot about, how scared should we be of this stuff, and I think that there is a certain, a legitimate concern, especially for writers, but at the moment, it's just a tool that is parsing written word and trying to come up with things that have been written before. So as much as it can pull intelligently from correct things that have been written, it can also pull from things that were written in jest, or things that were written that are just factually incorrect, or things that were deliberately written as misinformation by, outside actors, which I think is a different concern than maybe what the writers are worried about, but a concern nonetheless.
It's interesting because most of there's going to be a revolution. There already is a revolution in the legal world with this stuff. And that's been going on for years with the, whether it's the Westlaw, Reuters, and LexisNexis, and the search capabilities and suggestions. And, it started back in the day with the idea of keynotes and ways that you could take the headings and then manipulate those, or at least search for those in very rudimentary fashion. Once this is applied, I can really see where there's going to be an absolute erosion of kind of the work that has traditionally been done at almost a entry level at the law. I mean, you can see, I was having the discussion with some pretty prominent trial lawyers recently, and we were talking about, there is a world in which the AI could be trained to do a lot of the work that you now rely on paralegals, so to speak, and associates for, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think that's why people are concerned, because that kind of stuff that is just, more entry level is, especially if you start to get into areas where these companies, these open AIs and these other companies that have these tools are able to sell sort of the more baseline version of it to a law firm, and the law firm can specifically then train it to do exactly the types of things in the style that it wants.
Right. And then, you have it. I mean, I think of a company like LegalZoom, full disclosure, used to advertise for us, but you wonder if the kinds of things and forms that they use, whether they've gotten into this space to see if they can make it even more user-friendly, if you will, or whether they feel that it's an existential threat. I can see that. When I was talking with the trial lawyers, we were saying, well, we have that conceit that, you can't do something to supplant the act of being a trial lawyer. And then I was thinking, well, what if the AI all of a sudden becomes kind of used by the fact finder, the judge or a jury, and you start to have give me a decision based on this set of facts or this kind of briefing, and see what the decision is, and then take the lawyer basically kind of out of the equation. I mean, you could spend hours or spend hours thinking through the possibilities of, look, you've got an arraignment, you've got a series of charges. What are the various motions that generally, you look for a statute of limitations defense, you look for whether all of the elements have been made to a crime. You then have if you do a preliminary hearing and still have humans doing the preliminary hearing, and you believe that there's probable cause, and you then summarize or able to summarize the facts of a case. So, what then is the outcome that should be or should not be based on what you have and what the facts are.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing to think about is really just how fast this is evolving. I mean, we're now at Chat GPT 4. We were at 3.5 only a few months ago. And
so tell me, as it's evolving, what does that mean as you get to the next level, the next iteration?
It just means it's more intelligent. It's going to pull in less of that incorrect information. It's going to know, a little bit more based on the instruction. You're going to be able to parse it out more specifically, instead of, tell me about Gary Smith from the Adam Carolla Show. It'll be, tell me about Gary Patrick Smith, who produces Reasonable Doubt, has worked for the Adam Carolla Show, and has appeared on this show, and this show. And then it will know to specifically pull kind of only from those specific use categories. And it will be able to give you a much more narrowed and intelligent response.
Fascinating stuff. Well, I'm sure we'll get some comments down below.
I'm sure.
Be looking at them, and I appreciate it. And thanks for taking a little time on this Sunday, Gary. It was
absolutely
fascinating.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate your time as well. You enjoy New York, and we will look forward to seeing you later this week.
You got it. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/Reasonable Doubt Podcast.